Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something that's been like a puzzle for scientists like forever. How does life create so much order and complexity, especially when you look at it, at the molecular level?
It really does make you think, huh?
Like building this intricate, sandcastle,
Yeah.
but on a beach with waves constantly crashing around it.
Right. It seems almost impossible.
And this idea that biological systems are kind of like defying this natural tendency to just become more disordered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's something that physicist Erwin Schrödinger was really grappling with back in the 1940s. His book, What is Life?
Mm.
He actually proposed this concept that was really kind of a game changer at the time. It's called order from order.
Mm.
But to really understand just how revolutionary this idea was, we need to kind of start with the basics, like classical physics in that bustling world of molecules.
Yeah, for sure. So classical physics, especially thermodynamics, it relies on these statistical laws that work great when you're dealing with tons and tons of particles. It's kind of like, think about a balloon filled with gas. The way it behaves, it
Right.
expands when it's heated, contracts when it's cooled. That comes from the average behavior of just countless gas molecules that are moving around randomly. And that's actually what's typically referred to as order from disorder. The overall behavior that we see, that predictability, emerges from all that chaos of those individual particles.
Okay, so the order that we see in the balloon, that's a result of the chaotic movements of all those gas molecules. Yeah. But what happens when we kind of zoom in to the level of like a single molecule, where those classical laws that we were talking about, they don't really hold up as well?
So you're essentially shrinking that balloon down until it just has a handful of gas molecules in it, right? Now the random movements of each molecule, they have a way bigger impact. Instead of everything averaging out nicely, their individual movements can cause the balloon to behave erratically, like expanding and contracting in ways that you wouldn't predict.
What?
That predictability that we expect from those classical gas laws, it kind of breaks down at that scale.
So the rules that govern that macroscopic world, the big picture stuff, it gets a little fuzzy when we enter that realm of individual molecules. And this is what brings us to like the heart of Schrödinger's puzzle. Living organisms and that incredible accuracy of heredity. We know that genes get passed down through generations with such a low error rate. How does that level of precision even happen in a world that seems dominated by randomness?
That's the big question, isn't it? Schrödinger, he actually estimated the size of a gene even back then. And he realized that if only classical laws were at work, the error rate in heredity should be way higher than what we actually see. It's like, imagine trying to copy a really complex blueprint like billions of times over and expecting a perfect copy every single time. But you're doing it on a table that's constantly shaking.
Oh, wow.
That's the challenge that life seems to have overcome.
And, this is where I find the concept of decoherence just so fascinating. It's this idea that quantum effects, the strange behaviors that we see at the subatomic level, they usually get washed out in these warm, wet environments, like living cells.
Right. You can think of decoherence as being connected to that order from disorder principle we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's like if you're trying to build a house of cards on a table that's vibrating, that constant jostling just makes it nearly impossible to maintain that really delicate structure. In a similar way, the constant motion of all the molecules in a cell, it disrupts those fragile quantum states.
So the environment is essentially disrupting that quantum coherence. But here's where Schrödinger really threw a curveball. Instead of just dismissing quantum mechanics completely, he proposed this radical idea, order from order. He suggested that life might actually be using quantum mechanics at its core.
It really was revolutionary at the time. He was saying that life might have figured out a way to tap into these unique properties of the quantum world to achieve that incredible level of order, the kind we see in biological systems. Schrödinger even compared living systems to systems that are at absolute zero.
Whoa.
Where that molecular motion is minimized and quantum effects are totally dominant.
So while most of the world operates on this order from disorder principle, driven by random molecular motion, life might be playing by an entirely different set of rules.
Exactly. And this difference is especially striking when you think about how sensitive living organisms are to the arrangement of molecules, especially in their genes. Even the tiniest change in the sequence of DNA can have huge consequences for the whole organism.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This incredible sensitivity points to a level of order that goes beyond what we'd normally expect from classical physics alone. It's in those incredibly precise details that quantum mechanics might be having a really crucial role.
It's mind-blowing to think that Schrödinger back in the 1940s was already pointing towards this potential connection between quantum mechanics and the very essence of life. And while his ideas were met with a lot of skepticism initially,
Oh, yeah, they definitely were.
they sparked this whole new field of science, quantum biology. And today, researchers all over the world are exploring these ideas, searching for the quantum underpinnings of life.
It's such a cool field.
It really is. And you know what I find especially interesting is that,
What's really wild is that Schrödinger was writing about all of this before we even knew what DNA looked like the
yeah,
structure of it. And yet he had this feeling that genes, whatever their physical form, they couldn't just rely on that order from disorder to make
Yeah.
such accurate copies.
it's like he was peeking into the future of molecular biology or something. But even after we figured out that DNA was a double helix, a lot of scientists were still skeptical about quantum mechanics playing any role in biology. It just didn't seem to fit.
Well, yeah, I mean, the common thinking was that the warm, busy environment of a cell would be way too chaotic for those delicate quantum states to hang around.
Right. It's like trying to balance a spinning top on a roller coaster.
Exactly. The prevailing thought was, and I guess to a certain extent still is, that quantum effects mostly happen in those super cold physics labs.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to imagine those intricate dances of particles surviving in the constant hustle and bustle of a living cell.
It does seem counterintuitive, right? It's like trying to keep a perfectly still surface of water while a bunch of kids are doing cannonballs in a pool.
Ha ha ha. Yeah, good analogy.
But Schrödinger, with his outside the box thinking he saw things a bit differently, he argued that life might be operating on a whole different principle, one where quantum coherence actually plays a key role even in those warm temperatures.
And that brings us back to a major difference between living things and non-living things. Living things can amplify the effects of a relatively small number of really well-organized molecules.
Okay.
Your entire physical makeup, everything from your eye color to your, predisposition to certain diseases, it's all coded in just 46 DNA molecules, your chromosomes.
That's insane when you think about it.
And
Like a tiny handful of molecules controlling the characteristics of an entire complex organism. So that's where that order from order principle really comes in, right?
exactly this sensitivity to the exact arrangement of just a small number of molecules, it's a signature of life. It suggests that life isn't just blindly following those statistical averages from classical physics. It's actually using the special properties of quantum mechanics where the specific arrangement and interactions of particles at the subatomic level can have huge consequences.
But how does life keep this quantum coherence going in such a seemingly chaotic environment? Like what stops that decoherence we talked about earlier? Shouldn't those delicate quantum states get messed up?
That's one of the biggest mysteries that quantum biologists are trying to crack. Some think that biological systems have evolved these super sophisticated ways to protect those delicate quantum processes from the noisy environment.
Interesting.
Others think that certain biomolecules might just have built-in properties that help them resist decoherence. It's like they're these tiny quantum computers operating right inside our cells.
So we could be talking about totally new principles of physics and chemistry happening within living organisms. Principles that might change everything we thought we knew about how the world worked.
Exactly. It's like there's this hidden layer of reality we're just starting to peek into.
And the implications are huge, right? If life is really harnessing the power of quantum mechanics, it could open up whole new ways of understanding everything, from evolution to even consciousness.
For sure.
And it could even lead to new technologies that are inspired by nature's quantum tricks.
That's pretty exciting.
When you think about it like that, it really feels like we're at the beginning of a new scientific revolution, one that could completely change how we understand what it means to be alive.
Yeah.
Schrödinger, back in the 1940s, he saw a glimpse of this revolution. And now, decades later, we're starting to put the pieces of his puzzle together.
And that's what's so cool about science, right? It's this endless search for knowledge, always exploring the unknown. Every new discovery opens up new horizons, showing us how everything is connected in the universe, from the tiniest particles to the complexity of life.
Totally. And as we dig deeper into quantum biology, we're bound to find even more amazing insights into the secrets of life. So let's focus on some specific examples of how quantum mechanics might actually be at work in living organisms. Are there any places where we're already seeing evidence of this?
Definitely one of the most studied examples is photosynthesis. The process plants and some bacteria use to convert sunlight into energy. It's like the basis of most life on Earth. And researchers have found evidence that quantum coherence is actually involved in the way energy gets transferred within these photosynthetic systems.
Wow, so the energy is like taking a shortcut through the quantum realm to get where it needs to go. That's crazy. I've also heard some buzz about quantum effects in our sense of smell, too. Is there anything to that? So our noses are like these little Quantum detectors. That's wild. I never learned that in school. How are scientists even studying that?
It's really cutting edge research, that the whole mechanism of how we smell things, it's still kind of a mystery. But there are some theories that suggest quantum tunneling might be involved. You know that thing where particles can pass through barriers that they shouldn't be able to?
Yeah.
The idea is that odor molecules might be tunneling onto receptors in our noses, and that's what triggers the signals our brain interprets as smells.
So you're telling me there's a chance that our ability to smell fresh baked cookies is thanks to particles taking these tiny quantum leaps.
It's a possibility and a fascinating one at that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What other areas are researchers looking at for these quantum connections?
There's a lot of excitement around enzyme catalysis right now. That's how enzymes speed up biochemical reactions. Enzymes are basically the workhorses of our cells. They make all these essential processes happen, and there's growing evidence that quantum tunneling might be how they achieve this incredible efficiency.
So enzymes, those tiny machines that keep life going, they could be using quantum mechanics to get their jobs done. It makes you wonder if life evolved to use these quantum strategies or if it was always part of the plan.
That's a question that's got both evolutionary biologists and quantum biologists scratching their heads. Some think that early life might have relied on quantum mechanics even more, and then as life got more complex, some of these mechanisms became sort of built in.
We started with Schrödinger's bold idea of order from order, and now we're seeing how it might be woven into some of life's most basic processes. It's like discovering a whole new layer of biology.
Absolutely. This exploration of quantum biology is really just getting started. Every new study, every new discovery adds another piece to this incredibly complex and fascinating puzzle. Who knows what we'll find as we keep digging into the quantum underpinnings of life.
It's like we're looking into this hidden world inside our own cells, a world that operates by rules we're only beginning to understand. If this whole idea of life as a quantum phenomenon has got you curious, I encourage you to check out more about quantum biology. There's so much to explore. And we'll be back with more mind-blowing examples of quantum mechanics at work in the living world. So stay tuned and keep those questions coming.